Good afternoon, councillors. It's 5:31, so I'll officially open council's meeting. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we meet on this afternoon, the Wiradjuri people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Council's meeting is being live streamed in accordance with council's live streaming policy, which means your voice will be carried over to the live streaming, so we need to be aware of that. The people in the gallery also, if you speak, your voice will be carried over and fed onto the live stream. The next item on our agenda is where I will declare the GM as the returning officer as per schedule for the mayoral elections, and I will now vacate the chair.
Would we just like to just move and second the order? Move and second that, because we just need to...
Just bear with me for... Would you like me to move that, or are you going to move that?
Would you move that?
Councillors, staff, which takes us to item 12.1, 19301, election of mayor, and I've been asked would I move that recommendation before I vacate the chair that reads on the method of voting. We need to note that there are three options. We need to decide which method of voting we will have, I presume.
Page 45.
Sorry, page 45 it is, in the paper copies.
I moved for option 3.
Councillor Wallace has moved for option 3. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded Councillor Armstrong. The recommendation is, councillors, for option 3. All those in favour of option 3? Could I please have a show of hands again?
Yes.
That's 1, 2, 3. That's carried. Thank you, councillors. So, on that note, I will vacate the chair. Thank you to the General Manager.
Excuse me, councillors, I'll just have to walk around. As returning officer, I now invite nominations for the position of mayor. I currently have 2 nominations for the position of mayor. I have Councillor Chris Manchester, duly seconded, and Councillor Brian Ingram, duly seconded. Are there any other nominations? No? Okay, then we'll proceed to an open vote. So, the open vote, it's been resolved that the method of voting for the position of mayor will be a show of hands. Each councillor is entitled to vote, but only one candidate for each round of voting. I will now write each candidate's name on a slip of paper and deposit it in a barrel. The first name out of the barrel will be the written first on the tally sheet, with the second name out being the written second on the tally sheet. Councillor Brian Ingram. Councillor Chris Manchester. Councillor Chris Manchester is number 1 on the vote. Chris Manchester, please raise their hands. Sorry, just get the paper shuffled with me. Could you keep your hands up, please?
Rose O'Connor, Manchester.
So I have, just to confirm, Councillor Rita O'Connor, Councillor Chris Manchester, Councillor Matthew Stadler and Councillor Mark Ross. With those councillors voting for Councillor Brian Ingram, please raise their hands. Councillor Chris Manchester, 4. Councillor Brian Ingram, 5. I declare the winner to be Councillor Brian Ingram. He's now the Mayor.
You got six for Mayor Ingram. We had Flannery, Walker, Ingram, Wallace, Armstrong and Horton. 6.
So, my apologies, Ms. Smith. I've got news. So, my apologies. So, for Councillor Chris Manchester, I have 4, show of hands. Councillor Rita O'Connor, Councillor Chris Manchester, Councillor Matthew Stadmiller and Councillor Mark Rolls. For Councillor Brian Ingram, I have Councillor Flannery, number 1, Councillor Walker, number 2, Councillor Wallace, number 3, Councillor Armstrong, number 4, Councillor Horton, number 5, Councillor Ingram, number 6. Correct. We have a clear winner. The winner is Councillor Brian Ingram. He is duly elected Mayor for the next 12 months. Nominations for the position of the election of Deputy Mayor. I have 2 nominations with me. I have Councillor Mark Rolls, duly seconded. I have Councillor Tony Wallace, duly seconded. Are there any other nominations? Mr. Mayor, I'm assuming that this is also a show of hands.
Well, my understanding, the first vote was that the mayoral elections would be done by show of hands, yes.
It's been resolved that the method of voting for the position of Deputy Mayor will be a show of hands. Each councillor is entitled to vote once, for only one candidate in each round of voting. I will now write each candidate's name on a slip of paper and place it on the barrel. And the first name being taken on the barrel will be written first as number 1 and the second name as number 2. Councillor Tony Wallace. Councillor Mark Rolls. Councillor Tony Wallace is number 1. And Councillor Mark Rolls is number 2. With those councillors voting for Councillor Tony Wallace, please show your hands.
Ingram, Wallace, Ingram, Flannery, Walker, Wallace, Armstrong, Bolton.
Sorry, Debbie.
Ingram, Flannery, Walker, Wallace, Armstrong and Horton.
I have Councillor Horton, Armstrong, Wallace, Ingram, Walker and Flank. Correct, that's correct.
Six.
For Councillor Mark Rolls,
O'Connor, Manchester, Ross.
just double check that. Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Manchester, Councillor Rolls and Matthew.
And Councillor Stepper.
We probably should have resolved in the but I think you were for the election at the end, we didn't do that either.
We spoke about that before the election was held, and it was decided that the original vote to hold the mayoral elections by show of hands was discussed exactly just before that happened to happen, Councillor Stadmiller.
So just second one, together, that's all.
If you had a concern about it, Councillor Stadmiller, I would have appreciated, and I'm sure everyone would if you'd have spoke up at the time when the question was asked. But thank you.
Or you go in the meeting and realise yourself.
Beg your pardon?
Or you go in the meeting and realise yourself. You're in the chair.
That's exactly right. I am the chair, Councillor Stadmiller. I am.
Do your job.
And I expect to be the respect that a chair, whoever be in the chair, be noted. That's how it'll be started tonight. Thank you, Councillor.
So, the total said, I have number 1, Councillor Wallace, I have 6 votes, Councillor Horton, Armstrong, Wallace, Ingram, Walker and Flannery. And for Councillor Rolls, I have 4 votes, Councillor Rita O'Connor, Councillor Manchester, Councillor Rolls and Councillor Stadmiller. And I declare that the winner is Councillor Tony Wallace, who is elected to the position of Deputy Mayor for the next 12 months.
Look, I'm a bit gobsmacked.
I move a code of conduct violation against Councillor Stadmiller, not just for what he's just walked out without saying anything, but also because of how he addressed you, Mr Mayor, just previously.
Thank you for that, Councillor. The officer in charge of those matters, note that duly, please. I don't believe that needs
For that
to...
person to say for you, Mr Mayor, to do your job, that he is an absolute disgrace, that man. He fails to turn up to hardly anything. He's destructive, chaotic and absolutely disgraceful representative for the people of this council area.
Point taken on board, Councillor Wallace, and I'm pretty sure it's shared by at least 5 or 6 other councillors at least. Okay, let's get back to our council meeting now. The next item on the agenda as it rolls is apologies and the applications for leave. So the apologies, we have apologies from
Yes, Councillor Tuckerman.
Councillor Tuckerman, and we also have from Councillor Tuckerman a leave of absence request for tonight apparently was put in late for tonight and for the 23rd of October as asked for, so the recommendation is there. Could I have a move and a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Horton. Seconded, Councillor Rolls. All those in favour?
Question, Mr Mayor.
Question, Councillor Armstrong.
From memory, Councillor Tuckerman was granted a leave of absence at last month's council meeting for this meeting.
I'll direct that to the staff. I asked that question, but it was told to me that it was late.
Yes, through the chair, the request did arrive on the day of the meeting and didn't meet the deadline.
It was in the business paper, that was. Oh, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. The second leave of absence we have is for Councillor O'Connor, and the reasons are there with. We wish all the best with your health, Councillor, to grant Councillor a leave of absence till the 31st of December. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved, Councillor Manchester. Seconded, Councillor Wallace. All those in favour? Thank you. Next item, could we please be all upstanding for the expressions of sympathy, please? We will have a moment's silence for the following. Thomas O'Brien, John Trudgeon, Gordon Jarrett, George Killick, Anthony Bolger, Dominic Barbaro, John James, Howard Rowley, Ronald Acton, Lorna Ferner, Rose Davis, Dennis Sheehan, Gloria McCaffrey, Dawn Marchant, Edmund Goodrich, Colin Allen, Delcy Butt, Marigold Costello, Kenneth Hopwood, Barry Coulton and Patricia Hayward. Thank you. In light of the comments by the councillor that is now left, thank you to the councillors for showing their continued support in me to hold this position, and to the councillors against, I hope that I can fulfil the next 12 months and meet the needs and wants of everyone that of our council and our community, and live up to the expectation I will be held to. So thank you all. Next point of business is the confirmation of the minutes from the 28th of August and the 11th of September. I think are they one item, I think? No, two items?
Two items. Mayor, I'll move the item 19, excuse me, then 259, right at 23 with matters arising.
28th August.
So the mover of the minutes of the 28th of August. I'm going to need a seconder, but there was a dot point B there. Councillor Flannery. That dot point B was...
Matters arising being discussed.
I don't know if matters arising are actually on our agenda as such after we confirm the minutes. Okay, the recommendation is that dot point B be put there under that recommendation, and matters arising be dealt with at the same time. Have I got a seconder for that? Second to Councillor Manchester. All those in favour of that? Against? Thank you.
Mr Mayor, on matters arising, firstly, correction on item 19.272, I believe it's that Council made the report to status of the Roberts Park project and continued installation of the HOD luminaries. We also did move that the silver lights be removed from that tender process. meeting.
So you just moved those as correct, and now we're making amendments to them. Is that right?
We're dealing with matters arising as
Okay.
On 19279, we get confirmation from the General Manager as to when those nominations are going to be called.
Apologies, through the chair, I just realised my microphone's here for the speaker. Don't worry. 19279, Wombat Progress Association, is it?
Sorry, 19279, no, Weeds was moved at the meeting that all nominations for members of the committee,
Yep.
355.
Yep. Through the chair, we haven't advertised those yet. Our intention is to advertise them and have them out and back. We
Mr.
did.
Mayor, this has been going on for a long period. It was a very simple motion that resolved at the last meeting. We thought it was a very simple thing to put an ad in the paper for nominations.
Through the chair, just the delays with the additional meetings. Certainly, it is a simple process to put the ad in the paper.
So there's always reasons why things can't be done. This has been on the agenda for 2 years, trying to get at least a committee and then 355 committee. When we move motions, the expectation is that the action.
Yep, just through the chair, that was last month, yes.
So
Not
that,
3 years ago.
that's noted, staff. Get that matter?
Yes.
Anything else, Councillor Flannery?
The Harden pool, it's dealt with later in the meeting, so that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Clarification.
Councillor Walker?
Mate, what was the issue on 272? I've got stuck.
The lights.
We removed two of those lighting from the process.
Okay. The next minutes to deal with are from the extraordinary meeting held on the 11th of September. I call for the formal vote actually before the discussion was had.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, moved and seconded as point B, and then we discussed point B, and the only actions to come out of that is for staff to get back to councillor
To advertise.
Yes.
to advertise and to note that the lights are missing.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
You're correct, Mr. Mayor, we should have picked up that other issue.
Yep.
Fine.
Thank you. So, okay, we'll move along to the minutes of the extraordinary meeting that was held on the 11th of September. Moved Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor Rolls.
Mr. Mayor, can I just get clarification on the motion that was resolved? Could the General Manager just clarify, will we be lodging an application for the pool and a swapping of the funds subsequent to that approval, or will we be relodging the Garibaldi Gully and Chinaman's Dam?
There was an email go out late this afternoon. Yep, okay. General Manager might...
Through the chair, I can advise that we have been in contact with both the Office of Local Government and the Department of Premiers and Cabinet, and what they have advised to us is that the $400,000 outstanding on Blackheart Gully can be moved across to the pool project. However, the $754,000 for the Lambing Flat project cannot be moved. That project also had a co-contribution from council. So certainly, so now that pool, the resolution as it stood said that if the grants were unsuccessful, that council would borrow those funds. However, council, the round 3 is due on Friday, and council can indeed put an application in for $1.1 million for the pool, with the remainder coming from Blackheart Valley to satisfy that, and that is still within the allocation of the round 3 funding.
Thank you for that.
So,
There is an update in the email when you get to it that explains it a bit more further.
thank you.
Okay, mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you. Leave that. The next item I have is any disclosure of interests that need to be. Councillor Flannery has one.
As a DA, that's my DA, Mr Mayor. I don't know what the number is. 19314.
Yep, okay.
Thank you. No other declarations of interest. I'll move on to the next item, which is the mayoral minute. Okay, councillors, as you would have seen, I put this mayoral minute there in regard to the Crown Lands negotiation, and the little summary there is pretty self-explanatory. This is one of those projects that seemed like a real good idea at the time when they looked at being part of a pilot program to review all Crown land. As it turns out, with a lot of things, when you dip your toes in first, there's a lot of areas that will be discovered that people hadn't thought about. So to cut a long story short, there's no doubt in my mind that this will have significant financial costs, and it's already proven to have significant resourceful costs with staff. As was explained at our extraordinary meeting in regard to rate harmonisation, we haven't got the resources that we need to do things in a time frame that we have to do, like the LEP and all that important stuff that we have to do. It's all important. This was optional at the time, so I'd really like to seek support in writing to the Minister to see if we could withdraw from that process, because it financially will be very draining, resourceful with staff it will be very, very draining. And I think that Hilltops Council needs to concentrate and handle the work, day-to-day work we have, rather than being involved in this review and being one of those 5 councils. It's just my thoughts, and I thought, well, I need to bring it to Council's attention so we can contact the Minister and see if there is an option for that to happen if Council decides that's the way they want to vote on this matter. So I'm happy to take any questions, but...
Question, Mr Mayor?
Councillor Armstrong.
Through you to the General Manager. What are Council's costs in regard to this project so far? Incurred costs?
Look, through the Chair, we don't have any incurred costs at this point. We are meeting every fortnight with a staff member, and it's only just started. So it is clearly the only cost that is involved for us has been the provision of that staff member to some 2 to 3 meetings. However, the negotiation, as it's called, or pilot program, does consider at this point Council's interest in any of the parcels. The difficulty about sitting in a meeting discussing interest is that at this stage all we're doing is flagging to the Crown properties where we already have infrastructure. There's some 1,167 parcels that will be worked through over the pilot period. However, that pilot period is just on 12 months. Whilst we may not incur costs at this point, the nature of negotiation requires an inferred cost at some point, and that is not known. There certainly would be legal fees in relation to any transfer of properties if that were to occur, and certainly a requirement of the Crown Lands recent amendments that we would need plans of management for any of those parcels that we undertook or retained, and indeed early indication from other councils in relation to their own Crown Lands negotiations, discussing sums of some $200,000 in order to put the number of plans of management in place, not only for Crown Lands in that pilot, but Crown Lands that we're currently in control of or managing.
I'm a bit confused. At the original outset of this project, Council was advised that there would be an officer appointed to handle the project. So if that officer was appointed, and I understand that was the case from the previous staff,
Yes.
then Council must have incurred costs unless that officer was terminated immediately after that meeting?
No. Through the Chair, you're quite right in the fact that we had a transition officer position for the putting together of the parcels of land and actually going through those and actually documenting those. Certainly their salary costs would be considered to be part of the project, but they were part of transition funding. And that officer is no longer with us, so we have absorbed the current negotiations in the client at this point.
So we have incurred costs?
We have incurred costs under the name of the transition officer, yes.
And those costs would be in the order of?
I can take that on notice and provide that to you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor O'Connor.
So, Mr Mayor, can we just go back, say, to the Young Lands Council and the Minister and just talk about it before we actually finalise it? Because they probably aren't aware of it, that's all.
There'll be considerable conversation if they had. Understand there's notice of motion, it was a mayoral minute, to see if council wanted to follow through with that request. We can defer that request to further conversations with that group, if you like, Councillor O'Connor, or we can put a dot point B in there. I'd like to move that recommendation in some form tonight. So if you'd like a dot point B in there, that dot point A is done after consultation with whatever group you want to talk to. So I'm in your hands as to who you think needs to be spoken to, sorry.
Well, I think the Young Aboriginal Lands Council, who I'm just not sure how far the involvement had got with how much work had been done, but probably they were involved to some degree, so perhaps a conversation with them.
Look, through the Chair, the parties that would currently sitting around the table are the Crown, ourselves, the State Aboriginal Lands Council and the Young Aboriginal Lands Council.
Well aware of where the process is?
Yeah.
Okay.
At this stage, it's just commenced.
Question.
Councillor Walker.
I'm a little bit confused. Why the haste to withdraw from this other than there's a 12-month deadline?
Through the Chair, my understanding is that Councillor, the Mayor has raised the issues around resourcing, both financial and physical resourcing for the project.
I understand that, but surely there's an advantage of going through this process. If we don't get it done in time, at least if the process is proceeding, there's something to be gained from it.
Now, I don't believe that's quite the intent of what I want to do. There's 5 councils we're putting the pilot project to do this process with all these Crown lands. The timelines neither here nor there, I believe, but given the undoubtable evidence that we have on our hands that our council is totally committed to all the projects and everything we have on our table, I think that something that was optional to start with, and I believe hopefully is still optional, no doubt council will have to go through the process at some stage. But what I'm suggesting is let someone else do it first. Let the other 4 do it, or put another 5th council in there, find all the hurdles, find all the trapdoors, all the financial costs that will be involved with legal firms for a start, all those things, and we may be in a better position to handle it financially as well as in a proper manner. I don't believe we've got the resources to do it now, but that was the reason, that was my recommendation. Any other questions, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, I think that makes sense, everything you've said. Let somebody else go first and discover the pitfalls, and we come in later if we want to.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Councillor Armstrong, do you have a question?
I was just going to say, Mr Mayor, I share your concerns that Council's ability to resource all of these projects. I'm reminded that we are still in our infancy with Tech 1 and there are significant issues that we need to overcome with that. It would appear as though some of those issues may impact upon this project in terms of our property database and the GIS. To me, it makes no sense to be on the bleeding edge with these things. It's better to be a little bit slower and perhaps, like so many other things that the state government pushes back down to local government, there might be some additional funding at the end of it.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. The last point is very relevant, and I think that'll have to be forthcoming from the state as these other councillors work through this quagmire of Crown land acquisitions. Having said that, anyone else like to question in regard to it? I'll move that we adopt that recommendation if I get a seconder. Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour? Again? Councillor Walker against? That's carried. Thank you. The next item, 18298, we won't deal with now. It is a notice of motion, and procedure says notice of motion are done at the last point of council in the Code of Meeting Practice, so we'll come back to that later. It's in the wrong order. 19299 is the mayoral report. My diary is there. There's a couple of things I will touch on, but first of all, sorry? 298, I just said Councillor O'Connor, sorry, that is a notice of motion which will be dealt with in the correct order later in the meeting. Yep. 19299 is the Mayor's report, which I will make comment on some of those items after I go around the room with councillors, and Councillor Horton has a report there. If you'd like to speak to it, Councillor Horton, any calls?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to report on the meeting up at Terrigal. The Mayor and I had the 2-day meeting there, and it's comprised of 20 newly amalgamated councils. And the idea was to get feedback as to what they did wrong and what they shouldn't do and should do in future amalgamations. The number one problem that came from every council was retaining staff. They all had problems retaining staff. They've all lost staff. The second big problem was attracting professional staff to fill those positions. So it doesn't just apply to Hilltops, it's very, very general. There was some discussion about perhaps forming hubs, so and putting staff in those hubs, and let various councils use that one hub, use the same staff. In future amalgamations, when they install administrators, they should only be there for 3 to 6 months, no more. And they should elect councillors ASAP. And they should make sure that the administrators are suitably qualified. It turned out that there were quite a few that weren't suitably qualified to do that job properly. So that was a common theme from everyone. They talked about the rating philosophy, no change in the rating system for 50 years. A bit of discussion about special rate variation. It was mentioned by one table that the rate notices are not simply rates, and the public, quite a few of the public are not aware of that. The notice includes, the rate notice includes water, sewerage, waste removal, etc., and we need to tell the public that. It's not just for rates. Properties with unpaid rates should be reduced from the time period to reclaim that money should be reduced from 5 to 3 years, depending on circumstances. And the most interesting thing, or one of the most interesting things for me, was that a lot of the councils there were, of course, the result of forced amalgamations. And we've got a few councils close to us, Tumbarumba, Gundagai, Cootamundra, and I thought they'd be jumping up and down about demerging. And Cootamundra, Gundagai had the mayor, the deputy mayor, and 2 other councillors. Not one person, when they had their opportunity to speak, mentioned de-amalgamation. They were all like lambs. Everything was positive, everything was good. So I just find that astounding. But it was a good meeting, and everybody contributed significantly. The one thing that I stressed to in further amalgamations was that, relating back to the previous forced amalgamation of the Hilltops, and I was at a meeting in Sydney which was conducted by the local government of New South Wales when Premier Baird came out and said there'd be no forced amalgamations under the government that I lead, and Baird, who was the minister, and Toole, who was the minister at the time, came out and said there would be no forced amalgamations, and then of course it both turned out to be telling lies. So I said, in the next amalgamations, if you're going to have forced amalgamations, tell the people. If you're not going to have forced amalgamations, you don't have to tell them anything. But don't tell them that there won't be forced amalgamations and then do it. And there's still a lot of people in all the communities, they don't talk about it, but it's still heavily embedded in their minds. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Councillors workshop on the 10th of September, and then the LEP committee meeting also on the 10th of September. LEP for the LEP, sorry, and also tonight's meeting and meetings as minuted.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As listed, I also attended Mercy Day at Mercy Care the other day, which they were pleased to see Councillor represented on this special day for them. So that was good to go to. And also what was delightful, and Councillor O'Connor most probably found the same, and that was the story time hour at the Young Library the other week. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace.
I attended the workshop on the 10th of September and was pretty much away from then until a couple of days ago. So it's been.
Thank you. Hope you had an enjoyable holiday. Councillor Manchester.
Meetings as minuted. Subalco liaison meeting and the Subalco VPA meeting, Traffic Committee meeting, Sponsorship and Finance Committee, and Murrumburrah Precinct Committee and Murrumburrah Flood Study Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Just as I've written, my favourite spot was adjudicating at the Archdiocesan Public Speaking. Kids came from Murrumburrah, from Queanbeyan, from Goulburn. It was amazing watching 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds stand up and do public speaking that a lot of adults just couldn't do as well. It was really wonderful. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Meetings as minuted.
Thank you. Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Council workshop on the 10th of September, 12th of September, the extraordinary meeting, Murrumburrah Precinct meeting on the 12th of September as well. I think the 11th of September we had the extraordinary meeting as well, I think, and Southwest Merino Field Days on the 3rd of August, which was a fantastic day.
It was. Yeah, I also attended that, and it's growing every year. It's a great day for the wool industry. I was going to touch on the Life After Amalgamation Forum at Terrigal, but Councillor Horton's covered that off pretty well. The one point that was heavily spoke about was the fact of when they did it, and they told us certain things the state government would happen, and they had highly qualified and administrators and general managers to put in place, and every merged council all said the same thing. The biggest problem they have at the moment is dealing with the legacy of decisions made by administrators, not over 6 months but over 17 months. And everyone in the room, bar one council in Sydney that was joined together, that are both nearly the same size, same budget, same population, they didn't have as many troubles because they kept an existing general manager, and Queanbeyan Pallarang was quite successful because they kept Tim Overall in charge, but no one else was too happy. So next time round there was some recommendations made about that. Anything else has been on there? If there's any questions, it's pretty well covered off where I've been. Having said that, would someone like to move those councillors' reports? Councillor O'Connor, seconded Councillor Flannery. Thank you. All those in favour? Again, Community Recognition Scheme. Has anyone got anyone to nominate at this meeting for that? No?
Yes, I'd like to nominate the young junior cricket for the excellent work they've done in revitalising junior cricket in the young area.
Thank you, and you've probably prompted me, Councillor Armstrong, that I might that we recognise the young cherry picker football club, who were club champions and had 3 teams in the grand final: the under-17s, under-19s, and reserve grade. And the only team to miss out was the first grade team, and they were successful with the under-17s and the under-19s, and the reserve grade unfortunately got beat, but it's a great effort by the young cherry pickers to have that 3 grades and all in the grand final. So, yeah, I commend them for their work. Councillor Ross.
Could I add that I'd just like to congratulate all the staff and everybody who was involved in the long lazy lunch at the start of the Cherry Festival. The organisation every year is becoming more professional, and the people that John and I sat with came from Newcastle and also from down the coast, and both groups were very impressed with the day and what our region is doing. So I would like to congratulate everybody who was involved in the Cherry Festival opening events. Thank you.
Okay, well, could I have someone move those recognitions, please?
Move that way.
Councillor Armstrong, seconded. Councillor O'Connor, thank you. All those in favour? Again, thank you. Okay, we're getting there now. 1903, I believe. 1903, meeting dates and times for ordinary meetings of council. Council, there's a report there and there's a recommendation there.
Question.
Question, Councillor Armstrong.
We've currently got the 25th of September 2019 on there. I believe that's tonight.
I noticed that
I think that could be omitted. But I do note that there is no meeting set for January, and I think that given the significant backlog that this council has in terms of its major projects and the work that we've got to get through, that the luxury of not having a meeting in January is something that we cannot afford. So I believe that meeting should be, the meeting on the 25th of September 2019 should be replaced with a meeting on the 4th Friday of January 2020.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Armstrong.
Mr Mayor, look, I'd like to, are you moving that recommendation?
Yes.
I'd like to foreshadow that we move the dates to the third Wednesday of each month, noting that if we stick to the schedule as listed, it is 11 weeks between the November 27 meeting and the, accepting what Councillor Armstrong has just said. If we adopt a January meeting, it does change the numbers, but we'll be moving a meeting forward under this proposed schedule. We'll be moving a meeting forward in December, so we have a 3-week break between the November meeting and the December meeting, and then it's 11 weeks before we meet again on the 26th of February. So depending on councillors' acceptance of the motion put forward by Councillor Armstrong, I foreshadow that we move to the third Wednesday of each month.
But still miss out in January. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That's the foreshadowed motion. Okay, so we've got a motion by Councillor Armstrong that we have a council meeting on the 4th Wednesday of January 2020. Someone's got that date ready for me? No? Okay. Now, don't all go at once. Don't rush me. I'm concentrating.
That is the 22nd.
Okay, we've got the date there. Thank you. So I've had a seconder for that by Councillor Walker. You're with Greg?
Yep.
Yep, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Walker. Any other discussion in regard to that motion? Councillor Rolls.
I'm not sure if this comes in, Mr Mayor, but I'd like to for us to consider changing the time slightly of the meeting.
Yep.
I know you smile at it. No doubt it's come up many a time.
There's something else that came very clear at the meeting in Terrigal. It was about when councils tried to talk around changing times of meetings, so that was the reason for the gig.
My suggestion is just maybe an hour earlier, considering that a number of councillors, especially as we're moving around the area, we are travelling at night and the staff are travelling at night.
So, Councillor Lark, are you going to foreshadow a motion?
Yes, well, I suppose I am. I'll foreshadow the motion.
We'll get the process in place then. If you're foreshadowing a motion, if you could read that out slowly for Deirdre to type up.
That council meeting times commence at 3:30. 4:30. 4:30 p.m. Rather than the 5:30 that they are. Because do I need a reason for it?
No, you can speak to it when we get there, if you like.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor,
Councillor
I'm happy
Manchester.
to second that, but what I suggest to do rather than go through all this is to see whether the mover and the seconder of the first motion and the mover and the seconder of the shadow motion are happy to include that in their motion rather than go all the way down through this.
I take it, Councillor Manchester, that the mover and the second haven't moved so far to say any of that, and I've got a mover and a seconder for the first motion. I will put the first motion. And then we'll
What
work
I'm
our way
suggesting is you ask them whether they're happy to.
the mover and the second happy to include any of those, or just have the motion as it is?
I'd much prefer to put the vote for the inclusion of the January meeting as a separate item.
There you go, there's your answer, I believe. So now further discussion or questions in regard to the motion put by Councillor Armstrong and seconded by Councillor Walker, that there be a meeting included on the 4th Wednesday in January to our schedule. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Now, so the 4 shadow motions are gone, given that that motion's been carried. I'm willing to open to councillors. There's obviously some feelings about the 3rd or the 4th Wednesday or the time of our meetings. If someone would like to talk to that, and we need to decide that today. Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor, I always have it is just on a personal note, I will be absent for the last meeting in January, but I also believe that we should consider the 4:30 time slot. I do agree with, I think we've had too many meetings go too late, so I'm happy to support.
Okay. Any other conversation about the 3rd or 4th Wednesday or the time of our meetings? Councillor Rolls.
Through the Mayor, I'd just like to, I'm not sure if I can do this, ask the staff, does it make it much more difficult to get all the information organised if it's going to be the 3rd Wednesday rather than the 4th, as it's bringing it forward a week in the month? Does that make any difference?
I imagine it would on the initial meeting, because you lose a week, but after that I suppose the cycle would fall into place. The same cycle would be every 3rd week to 4th week. It would just interfere with the first time the cycle changed.
Yes, I suppose, Mr Mayor, I'm just considering that a lot of things seem to happen in those 1st, 2nd and 3rd weeks, and perhaps we just need that extra week just to make sure that everything is organised.
Okay,
That's
so
my concern.
I'm going to call for a motion, Councillor, if you'd like to put a motion in regard to starting times for our council meetings, so we can keep moving forward with our meeting.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I would like to move motion that meetings commence at 4:30 p.m. rather than 5:30 p.m.
Councillor Flannery, you second that. Councillor Flannery, second that. Anyone want to speak against it or for it? Or
I'll speak for it.
Councillor Armstrong?
I think that a number of the recent meetings that we've had have gone till well past closing hour of a licensed establishment, and whilst that doesn't worry me, I'm quite certain that there are members of the community that perhaps would lament at that. I think that Councillor Rolls' suggestion is something that should be undertaken by Council as an action, in that there is a lot of business to be transacted in the next 12 months, and we need to make sure that we can get all of the business transacted per each month that we receive. So starting an hour early isn't going to kill anyone, and it's going to give us that extra time. So I'm all in favour of it.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Any speakers against? Any speakers for?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'm happy with the 4:30, and I'm quite happy with the 4th Wednesday of the month. That's worked pretty well for the last couple of years, so I don't see why we should change that.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. So the motion I'll go is that Council change its starting time from 5:30 to 4:30 p.m. All those in favour? Against? That motion is carried. Wallace and Ingram with the 2 out of line. Thank you, councillors. That's correct. Item 19.304, Hilltops external, internal and 355 committee representation. The recommendation, councillors, is there. I don't know about endorsing things till we probably run through it and see who's still got their name there and who wants to be on those committees before we endorse anything, I'd imagine. So, councillors, I'll go quick if you like.
Mr. Mayor.
Or Councillor Armstrong.
I'm going to foreshadow a motion that this is actually put back a month, because at this particular stage there is no definition of the delegations that are provided for these particular committees. I really think that we need to be aware of the delegations before we put people on them or agree to their reconstitution.
Point taken by Councillor Armstrong that matter 19.304 would be deferred to next month's council meeting. Councillor, is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right.
Do I have a seconder for that? Second to Councillor Horton.
Can I have a question to
Councillor
the staff through you, Mr. Mayor? Is it anticipated that those delegations will be clear by the next council meeting?
Through the Chair, we can certainly make our best effort. Look, in relation to the majority of these committees, the advisory committees, they're pretty straightforward. It's really just the work we've been doing around the Section 355, just making sure that that's clear. Again, we have been working through that, so we'll make every effort to do that.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions or queries on that, I'll put Councillor Armstrong's motion. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you, councillors. It moves us along to item 19.305. Sorry, Councillor Walker was against that. 19.305, notice of intention, response submission to the Minister for Local Government. Councillors, we're all pretty aware of what this is all about, and the detailed submission is there to be sent off. In your hands.
Can I open discussions, please, Mr. Mayor? Move that we open it.
I'll second that.
It's I've got to move and seconder for the recommendation, or move and seconder we go into committee. In committee. I've got to move and seconder we go into committee. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. We are now in committee. Councillor Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, just a number of questions. Question 1, the last sentence of paragraph 1 under council response. I do not understand what that means. I don't understand what the next paragraph means. On page 66 or page 4 of the response, to read the exact wording. This extension was granted until 28th of February 2019. Council failed to meet this extension. Subsequent investigation revealed that whilst the statements had been generated in January, these could not be easily reconciled during the January audit 2019 visit to be finalised and meet the February extension date. I mean, that's not a sentence, is it? It's just not a sentence. We can't send that off to the Office of Local Government. And the next paragraph.
Through the Chair, it is actually... It's financial jargon, you may not understand it, but the process is that we seek an extension in relation to our financial accounts, and we seek that extension in the hope that we actually produce those financial accounts for the auditor's visit that was in January, and that they actually then get audited in time to meet the extension that be forwarded to the office. What we're saying in that sentence is that we had made that commitment, and at that time, after that commitment, our auditors visited us in the January, and we recognised at that point we would not be able to meet that extension. So.
Next paragraph, similarly, I'm just not too well. I hope the person reading this understands what you mean. Bottom of the last paragraph, operationalisation. I mean, that's a new word for me. There's no explanation on that.
Your system is operational. It's actually ensuring that it's actually working.
Fair enough. Mr Mayor, I find the explanations in here at a council level to be questionable. I don't understand. I don't understand who. If we go to the top of the next page, the top paragraph,
Which page is that?
67. I, as a councillor, do not understand why these processes weren't achieved. Why these? I mean, it's not. I don't believe this explanation is sufficient to us as councillors. I don't know how the state government will receive it, but it goes on to state at this point
The question is that why don't you think that this information is sufficient? It's actually detailing what happened. So what is it that you think is missing?
I think there's insufficient explanation as to why we didn't meet these deadlines. I mean, when we get a letter stating that we need to explain why we as a council shouldn't be dismissed, so there was
That's
nothing in...
That's not what the letter says. The notice says actually that the intention is to give a performance improvement notice, and the order is to produce the audited statements within 28 days.
And there was also a notation to say that it was such a serious breach that an administrator could be appointed.
Through the chair, no, we did not say that. That we were asked to respond to the 3 questions as they've been outlined in the submission. So the 3 questions are designed to ask what has happened, what have you done, are you functioning, and what are you doing. So they're historic, current and future, and that's the way that the submission has been put together.
I don't have the previous OLG or ministers, but it was very clear that we need to justify why we were not functioning properly, and that our position as an organisation or as an operating council was in question. Now, that was my very clear reading of the letter.
The letter stated that we needed to show cause basically as to why we shouldn't receive a performance improvement order. If that performance improvement order was issued to us and we didn't and council didn't comply with it, they had 2 options: to implement another improvement order or take further action, which could include putting council and administration. So you're right, at the end of the line.
Correct.
At the end of the line, that's exactly what was there. But to start off with was to show cause as to why. Hopefully this submission, as you've just said, is accepted by the Minister's office, because we have told them we will send this report off to them tomorrow. So with the financials that have been done, and I believe, I don't know when I'll mention this, someone will give me a cue, I think we're having a phone-in, councillors. I'm very, very disappointed to report to you that the review by our auditors, which is normally done in chambers with us, is being done over the phone, because our auditors couldn't provide anyone to suit our council meeting, which I find, and I've said it before and I'll say it in open air, totally unacceptable and total lack of respect for our organisation by our auditors, and it's the last time they audited us, and I'm pretty happy about that. That's totally unacceptable. Anyway, we're probably off the track a bit.
No, through the chair, they are available for you whenever you're
Well, they can wait till I'm ready now, if they're on the phone. So, we're dealing with this
Just a
matter.
question, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Armstrong, question.
My understanding is that those auditors were appointed by the Audit Office of New South Wales, 2 auditors. So this fiasco that we have with the auditors is also on the shoulders of the Audit Office of New South Wales. If there's an issue of performance on the part of the auditing firm, then perhaps that should not necessarily fall back to council to identify, but perhaps it should fall back to those people that engage that firm to identify.
You're very correct with your facts, Councillor Armstrong. That's exactly right. Councillor Walker.
Well, I'm basically saying the same thing. If we're going into the future, are we going to keep putting time back for this because our auditors can't meet their obligation as well? Is it all because of council? Because what we want to do, this is all behind us. We want next year's to be right, and this is not very encouraging in my mind.
And Councillor, that's also very pertinent, and I've already been made aware that Deloitte's, who will be our new auditors, have got us pushed back to start with, which is also very disappointing. to hear. Our organisation seems to be just pushed around to the point where it's very, very annoying. But we are in talks. I am aware that staff we're in talks with Deloitte and the State Audit Office to make sure that our 18-19 numbers are done in the correct time, and if we seek the extension, that extension will be met, and we get this organisation back on the right foot. Having said all that, if there's any other questions about this before we...
Mr Mayor, I mean, I reiterate my comments. I don't believe this report adequately addresses councillors as to why these issues arose, and I believe a number of the staff that were involved may or may not still be present, but we go through the report, and in relation to question 2, it goes on that we have a customer service strategy and policy. It hasn't been adopted. I mean, how can you say something to the state government that hasn't been adopted? It's straight out factually incorrect. I mean, we've got to sign off on this, and we don't have that policy in place. How can you write this in your report? I mean, throughout this report, there's things that are not factually correct in here.
Through the Chair, you need to produce evidence of that. However, you've asked a question about why this happened, and what this report tells you is that we made an error of judgment at the end of the financial year in 2018 when we were rolling our 3 legacy systems into our new system, and we went early. We failed twice, and we rolled the 3rd time, and that system, that rollover, which required 9 separate trial balances, created very significant issues for us in relation to reconciliation. Now, we know that there's been history in relation to the struggle with in order to maintain the reconciliation of those accounts. However, when we went in to remediate that in 2019, in the first quarter in 2019, everyone, including our external auditors, thought we were much further along than we were. And so we have spent a significant amount of time actually redoing the accounts in order to reconcile them, to get to a situation where we can have that unqualified audit. However, this most significant reason that we were late, and indeed the reason for the extension to the 28th of February was that we had 3 legacy systems that were not compatible, that were rolling over into a 4th. That was a highly complex project to begin with. When we rolled early and we made a poor decision, and hindsight is 20/20 vision, and had the failures that we had and still kept going, it created really significant problems. When we picked up that project again in 2020, we've certainly spent thousands of hours actually reconciling those accounts to get to this point. Why? Because it's absolutely essential that we do in order to prove that we are functioning, but not least the fact that our 2019-20 budgets are reliant on 2 years of audited statements as we go forward. We need that source of truth, and it certainly was beyond everyone's expectation that this process would require the time and effort that it did. And certainly I know from the comments made from the external auditors throughout that time, is they too actually found it one of the most difficult merged councils to audit throughout the time that they were doing in the year. They believed that it was a question of not understanding adequately the scope of the audit and the challenges of the audit of rolling those legacy systems into a new system. When you combine that with some decision-making failures along the way, because of a lack of expertise, a lack of knowledge in the sector in general, it combined to create a disaster and a crisis for us, which we have rectified, but certainly reputationally it's taken us much, much longer than anyone expected, including the State Audit Office, including our External Audit Office, and including the enormous amount of work that's been put in by our own local staff.
Mr Mayor, without knowing, through you, Mr Mayor, the General Manager, whose idea was it to roll 3 legacy systems before the end of the financial year? I mean, to me, that is a pretty basic issue. You should complete the financial year under the system you're operating on and roll over a new... I mean, I would have thought that's a very basic thing. I mean, who thought to buy Technology One without any backup support?
Look, through the Chair, they're valid questions, and certainly in question 3, Councillor, we attempt to say, what did we learn in this process? What improvements have we made to actually make sure it doesn't happen again? It's certainly a unique point in our history as a merged council. It won't be repeated. However, yes, it was a crisis. Yes, there were management failures along the way, well and truly. However, we have actually got to the other side with an unqualified audit, which was critical and vital to this organisation.
Thank you for that. Councillor Flannery, your points are very pertinent. I reflect back to what I said at Terrigal, that people were talking about finding information and stuff under rocks after administration. I said we were finding them under boulders, and this was one of them. And there's a legacy left there for us, but just cleaned up. Okay,
Mr. Mayor, can we have the report corrected to note to remove that we do not have a policy in place? We have not adopted the policy, the customer service policy. Can we also have, under key result area 4, sorry, I've lost my key result area 8.
Yep.
It notes that the rates harmonisation will be completed by 2020, which we've been advised it won't be.
Through the Chair, are you happy with the inclusion of the word draft for customer service strategy? Because even though it is not adopted, we still have a draft strategy, and indeed making the amendment on page 77 to 2021.
I'm happy for you to include the word draft.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other conversation?
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor, I couldn't support that, because that draft policy has been back to this council that many times that I can't recall them all. It has been thrown out by council on at least 2 occasions. There is no way in the world that I will support a letter going to the minister saying that that's our draft, when we well and truly know that it is not our draft, and it is not acceptable to council. It hasn't been acceptable to council on multiple situations and multiple occurrences. To consider it a draft now, I think, is absolutely ludicrous.
So I'm taking from that we need to take that whole element out of this report before it's sent off tomorrow to the Minister's office about the draft customer policy, or the customer policy or draft customer policy. From that point.
Page 71.
Okay, Councillor Horton, did you want to say something before we come back?
No, it's been said. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, we might come back out of committee if everyone's happy enough that that change been made.
One small other item, Mr. Mayor, on page 80, it refers to the last line under financial performance. We believe these results in 2018.90. I think that should be 19.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think there are a few instances of proofreading that are required to make sure we've got the right year and the right dates, because I think there might be further errors there too.
I'm pretty sure the Minister will want it reading that way. Okay, so the suggestion would be staff to go back over this pretty thoroughly tonight and early in the morning before you send it off to the Minister's office with those changes that Councillor Flannery mentioned, and any others that you may pick up that we've read over the top of ourselves.
I'd also concur with Councillor Flannery in relation to that sentence in that paragraph. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, maybe I don't understand finances either.
So through the Chair, that is in the paragraph on page 66. Okay.
Maybe it could be reworded in some shape or form, perhaps. Okay, councillors, given all that, someone like to move and second that we come back out of committee to get back into move. Councillor Flannery, seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour? Thank you. Okay, councillors, we're back on 19305 and the recommendations there. We've had discussions about some adjustments being made to that report before it is sent off tomorrow to the Minister's office. I need to move in a seconder. Move Councillor Walker, seconded Councillor O'Connor. All those in favour? Again. All those for? Thank you, it's unanimous. Thank you, Councillor. Item 19306, presentation of the audited financial statements for the year ending 30 June 2018. Now, is this where I'm supposed to call in our phone call?
Yes.
As I said, councillors, disappointingly, we have a report over the phone on the audited figures. Can I have a move and a seconder while we're waiting for that? Move, Councillor Horton. Seconded, Councillor Wallace. Thank you. Did you get that on?
Mr Mayor, while we're waiting for them to get the phone up, is there a reason why the auditor's signature, if you will, doesn't have a date and doesn't have a letterhead?
Sorry, through the chair, just which page are you looking at, sir?
Page 2.
Page 2 of the report.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I found it very difficult to work out what organisation this person worked for. Yeah.
Page 158 of the printed copy. 168.
One 168, is that where you're up to? Or
Yes, there's no letterhead and there's no date. I find that.
It's the same on top.
The Mark 2 version.
Larissa Chan.
It's just not on the sign.
Yeah,
And there is a date at the bottom of the...
17th of September 2019 it says, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Okay, we resolved that. We ready?
Certainly through the chair, we can take that on notice and...
It's there.
Yeah. The signature's overlaid, yes.
Here we go.
Okay, Bradley, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes, Trevor.
Can everybody hear that, or do you want us to put it onto microphone?
Speak again.
Can you just speak there, Bradley, so we can see that we pick it up?
Yeah, sorry, you're just trying to work out whether you've got a level. Yep, no problem.
Bradley, if you could just introduce yourself, that would be good, and then we can take the level off that.
Yeah, okay, no problem. Well, good evening. My name's Brad Bowen. I'm a senior partner with Crow, which was Crow Horwood in New South Wales, and fundamentally I lead our New South Wales local government efforts. So I'm here this evening because John Thompson, who was your nominated audit service provider, had another engagement. So being familiar with conduct reports and New South Wales local government, I was more than happy to step in and help with the finalisation, which fundamentally is the last step in the 2018 financial statement process for Hilltops, which has been a little while coming, but we're here now, and with the presentation of the report on the conduct, let us move one step further forward to concentrating on 2019.
Okay, we're right to be able to go with the presentation. We've got it up on screen now, Brad.
Oh, great. Thanks, Trevor. Okay, so with that in mind, John pulled together a presentation that we thought we'd speak to. Hopefully it'll be somewhat familiar for those who were there in the prior year. We're really going to follow along with the layout and the content of the report on the conduct of the audit, which is really the unique document that goes with New South Wales local government. And it's one of the audit opinions that is signed, and for Hilltops that was recently done by Larissa Chan, who's the Sector Director for New South Wales Local Government. Stepping through onto page 4 of the presentation, which is an income statement comparative. The key item to note here is the heading was saying 2019, it should be 2017, and it's actually, if you recall, the three-way merger and the 2017 period was a bit of a weird one. It's a 13.5-month period. So really what we're not comparing is apple and apple. And the way you can see that is if you go down to the grants and contributions line of 47 million, sitting in...
Hang on. Sorry, that's on the third page, is it?
So sorry, page 4, Trevor, yeah, the income statement comparative operating results.
Right.
Yeah, so you can see 47 million versus 21 million in the current period, but inside that 47 million, there's two really large numbers. There's the one-off operating grant of $5 million around new council implementation, and then there's also the 15 million around the stronger community funding. So those two items combined, account for 20 million of the difference in the year, and that was really quite unique to the amalgamation outcome for Hilltops. And then what that means due to accounting standards is once we received that money, we accounted for it as income in this respect. And many of you may be thinking, well, what's the matching? Because revenue is a profit in the 17 period, and we haven't actually fully expended it even in 2018. So what Ed Weiner and Trevor would be looking for is a base here to start getting some meaningful comparatives. And what there is coming through in 18, but also again still in 19, will be some of the spend associated with that grant funding received. So that is just one of the complications and uniqueness of revenue accounting for a not-for-profit entity. If we perhaps turn through to page 5, which is the operating results, and we can see that in the operating results before items, and this is where we backed out that $15 million. You can see in the 2018 year, we did improve our results, but it's still below the break-even benchmark of 0. What Council has got is an increasing depreciation charge coming through there, which is an additional hurdle to try and overcome. But the integrated management plan that Council has for the outlook years would be where you would take more importance of where this metric is heading. But in 2017, there would have been a lot of one-off expenses around implementing the new three-way council merger. The operating result of comprehensive income, this is on slide 6, Trevor.
Yep.
There's an improved position here. What we had in the 2018 year was a revaluation outcome, and that revaluation was of land and buildings. We had an $18 million increase in our buildings, and what happens in New South Wales local government is we revalue these items once every 5 years. And so with the latest revaluation, buildings was increased 18 million, and land went up by $1 million, and we also had some indexation of water and sewer, which is the balance. The large increase in the prior year, in the 2017 year, was fundamentally the 3 different standalone councils contributing their net assets across to the entity. So it's not expected that we'll see another result like 2017 again. But the 2018 results benefited from a $20 million uplift in land and building revaluation. On slide 7, which is starting to work through our income statement, Council heavily relies on 2 forms of income. One of them is rates and annual charges, and that's governed by permissible income. And in the 2018 year, the permissible income increase was 1.5%. You can see in the middle of slide 7, it says our rates and annual charges went up by 2.3%. So the difference between the 1.5% of permissible income increase was an increase in rateable properties across the council area in the same period. So council don't have a special rate variation currently, so 2.3 was consistent with our expectations, and the 1.5 uplift in permissible income. The other major number sitting inside there is your grants and contributions, and they're broken down between operating grants and capital grants. The main capital grant in the prior year was the new council implementation funding of 15 million, and in the current year, the thing to note there is that we continue to be in advance in our FAG grant, our financial assistance grant, running in an advanced position, which they're booked to income upon receipt. And what we do then is show them as restricted funds for our future spending purposes. So if and when the government realigns and pulls the revenue for FAG back into line, council will incur 6 months of FAG expenditure without having income, if and when that happens. Slide 8 is a breakdown of expenses. One of the main costs of council is employee costs. They've remained relatively stable between the two periods, and the 2018 spend is just over 21 million. We do have a small element of costs capitalised to projects and infrastructure PP&E. Smaller elements are materials and contracts, and then depreciation. The reason why depreciation has decreased year on year is because in the prior year we impaired $13 million worth of community land infrastructure. But for the 19 year, you'd expect a result reasonably consistent with 18, understanding that the uplift in buildings in the prior year would contribute to an uplift in depreciation in the 19 year. In terms of the cash flow statement, Trevor, this is on slide 9. Council reported an increase in cash in the two periods. Council really has very small borrowings relative to its overall size. I think it was something in the order of 13 million. So you can't really see on the graphic cash flows from financing activities. Really, council is reliant on its operating activity cash, and with the decrease in grant income, it's come down 20 million. And because council had been spending in the current year, what we did was redeem our investments, and that counts as positive cash from investing activities. So that's really the takeaway from slide 9, is that council, relative to its operations, has, for me, has very low level of gearing and therefore very low activity in financing activities. In terms of unrestricted cash, which is slide 10, what's important here is council generates money from water and sewer, which tends to be restricted cash externally. Then by vote of council, you have a series of internal restrictions, and council has quite healthy internal restrictions, tracking at about 24 million. This is where you can see your financial assistance grant advance position of 4 million, your stronger council funding yet to be dispensed of 13 million. Are the two main items in there, and then also council's restricting an element of its employee leave entitlement, really as a show of strength to demonstrate that some of that liability is actually cash back. You've got external restrictions of water of 9 million and sewer of around 4 million, being the lion's share of those amounts, coming down to what's free and unrestricted funds of council for spending, which is tracking at about the 700,000 mark. And that's highly consistent with the prior period results, and that demonstrates that council has some funds available for discretionary spending. Slide 11 talks to infrastructure, property, plant and equipment. This is the biggest item on your balance sheet. And as flagged earlier, we had a revaluation of land and buildings, but really council's biggest item is roads, bridges and footpaths. We carry something in the order of 264 million here, and this is an infrastructure asset which is complex in nature around the componentisation and arriving at fair value. But it's council's largest asset component, and therefore it's one of the most judgmental items around the effective life of assets and the depreciation rates associated with those. Council had fairly low disposals of assets during the year, and so it's less than $1 million was the net outcome of the write-down of assets. Turning over perhaps onto the performance ratios, which feature on page or slide 13 of the report. These ratios were, they came into being when the Fit for the Future material was gaining momentum, and that's a few years ago now. They continue to feature in the notes of financials in note 22, and we continue to feature them in the conduct report. What I'd suggest for Hilltops is that a range of the ratios don't individually present a great a picture or a story of council that really means anything yet. Council needs to get another couple of years worth of history and data in its aggregated, amalgamated form to have a story that means something. If we turn through them, the operating performance ratio was really quite challenged in 2017. And in 2018, as we're expending a range of the funds received around the amalgamation, you can see the loss result there. The benchmark is set at 0. What I would think is that if you look to get across, instead of the benchmark of 0 for all councils in the state of New South Wales, if you looked at your results comparative to other merger councils and specifically three-way merger councils, what I found is your result was highly consistent with a range of other amalgamated councils. So in the takeaway there would be, I think the benchmark of 0 is one that would be appropriate perhaps for some of your neighbouring councils who work in an amalgamated scenario. The own source operating revenue, this ratio is really quite a vesting one. The target is 60%. A lot of regional and rural councils find it very hard to achieve 60 because the more grant funding you receive, it has a negative impact on that, and that's what drove your 2017 results. You can see it tracking at a tick over 30, and that's because of a lot of grant activity that came through in the 17 year. And so its purpose was to assist council with its purpose of supporting the community and helping deploy the merger activity. And whilst we achieved it in 18, the graphic would suggest you were challenged in 17. Councils really need, especially Hilltops, which is a regional council, needs to continue its efforts at attracting grant funding. So I would suggest in the future, council will always find this particular metric hard to achieve at the 60% break-even point. Over on slide 16 is your unrestricted current ratio. And what this one is trying to say is the benchmark is set at holding $1.50 of unrestricted current assets for every dollar of current liabilities. The outcome is in 2018, council is showing $3.44 for every dollar of current liabilities. That's a state solvency measure by anyone's standard, and what that would demonstrate is that council can pay assets as and when they fall due, which is the going concern test. So we would consider that quite a safe result. And the reason why the prior year ratio is higher is around the grant funding that was received that was obviously sitting in cash that hadn't yet been expended. Page 17 talks about your debt service cover ratio. The metric is set at 2 times. And council had surplus above the 2 in the 17 period and just below in the 2018 year. I'd suggest that the result of 1.78 or around $1.80 is quite serviceable looking into the future, considering council's relatively low debt level of around 13 million. The page 18 talks about rates and annual charges outstanding. What's really pleasing here is that council must have effective mechanisms for chasing up and following up on outstanding rates and annual charges, and also council's ratepayers are adequately paying within terms the rates and annual charges outstanding. Council is posting a result of 8.31, which is still well below the 10% benchmark, and those efforts should be continued. Cash expense cover is on page 19. What this ratio is trying to demonstrate to council is that if your cash inflows were stopped and turned off, it would be suggested you should be holding 3 months' worth of expenses, being enough time, 90 days, to arrange alternate debt streams via either a bank overdraft or a loan. What this is saying is that council held 13 months' worth of cash expense cover, so well above the benchmark, and again demonstrates that council is liquid and solvent. That brings us to page 20. We really need to extend some thanks to Edwina, Trevor, Simon and the finance team. It's been a really extended process to get the 2018 closed out. The business paper that sat in front of this outlined some of the challenges around three-way amalgamation, plus the system merger, plus some personnel changes, meant that it was a somewhat drawn-out process. But it's really taken a solid effort from a project management perspective, and so we just like to flag from both Cro's perspective and the New South Wales Audit Office our appreciation for the ongoing support in terms of achieving the finish line. And the finish line was an unqualified opinion on the financial statements, which is really encouraging. I know the business paper flags some, you get a consequential outcome on legislative compliance regarding the timeliness of the execution, but the financial report is true and fair. So from that perspective, that was the target that council would be setting itself for, and that's really the conclusion that I'm here to share today. As John flagged, and as council would be aware, the audit office went through a tender process last year. Hilltops is part of a bundled arrangement, and Crow was not reappointed to that bundle of councils. So from here, this is the conclusion of our involvement in external audit arrangements. But we continue to have relationships and service a number of clients locally, and look forward to ongoing contact into the future. I think I took a couple of breaths on the way through, Trevor. Hopefully people have been nodding along. Happy to take any questions, but really that's the presentation that supports the report on the conduct of the audit for Hilltops for 2018.
Thank you very much for that, Brad. It's Brian Ingram, the Mayor. I'll open the floor to any questions. Brad, has anyone got any questions I'd like to ask? It looks like Councillor Flannery.
Brad, I'd like to know why it took so long for the auditors to get these reports finalised.
Yeah, so that's a very fair question. So I think in the business paper you would see that council arranged the reconciliations and all the support material in around June 2019, and as we hear today, it's the end of September. I think what we managed to run into was some workflow challenges, both from our side and the audit officer's side to clear these items. And really that's the explanation that we would own from our side, that when council achieved this ready for audit date in June 19, we then needed the balance of time to be able to marshal the appropriate resources to clear it. But councillor, yes, it certainly had some delays because this is a peak time of year with demands and workflow across the various state entities that the New South Wales Audit Office manages.
Our report says that Crowe Howarth were providing council with the opinion they were on track for completion of the financial statements in February, and that hasn't been achieved to now, which is pretty poor.
Yes, all I can do is acknowledge it's taken an extraordinary amount of time, and I think there are several lessons to come out of those. And from my perspective, I think there's a number that we would own from the audit side, both at an audit office level and at a Crow level, around the expediency of finishing it. My reflection is the end state is an unqualified audit opinion. From a timeliness perspective, it's really quite dated material now, and stakeholders, ratepayers, government agencies that provide funding, I'm sure would have liked it completed earlier. And from our perspective, there's no doubt there would be opportunities where if we had escalated it earlier and worked more closely with Edwina and Trevor, we could have, and there would have been opportunities to perhaps close it out late July and early August, which is 4 to 6 weeks earlier than we are now.
And that would have been a great timeline. It might have saved a letter coming from the Minister's office and doing Council's reputation not much good at all. But that's all in the past now, so we have to work and make sure that the next financials are there. Councillor Flannery.
I actually think, Brad, that should be included as a letter for our response to the state government, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that, as long as the commentary is fair and balanced, and I think there's various elements that contribute to it, and I would support that as an outcome, and I'm happy to help support that, working with Edwina and Trevor on that.
Thank you for that, Brad. Appreciate that. You'll be working on that tonight or in the morning. That report's going to the Minister's office tomorrow sometime. But any other questions around the table to Brad? No, everyone seems... Councillor Armstrong.
Brad, the issues that have been raised with Tech 1 and the systems integration, I guess in the opinion of the auditor, are we at a position where we're able to produce a set of statements for the last year out of our system, or are we likely to be sort of lumbered with more issues because of data mapping or issues similar to that as we move forward with the 18-19 audit?
Yeah, my response to the question would be, in terms of executing these things, there are three elements. There's people, there's systems, and there's processes. You've had a change of personnel, but across the completion of the year, Trevor certainly helped execute the finalisation of 18, and you've got a same person in the role who's familiar with journal entries, approaches, and judgment calls made. And that level of consistency is really useful to get an outcome that makes sense year on year. In terms of the system, and as you point to Tech 1 is commonly used in New South Wales local government. So I don't think necessarily the issue was the system itself being Tech 1. The issue was around some of the opening balances and the commonality and consistency of the data at the origination point. With the reconciliation activity that's been done and closed out on the 18 financials, we've got a solid launching point for 19. So the system limitations that were slowing us down and causing delays for the 18 process simply don't exist for 19 from a systems perspective. And from a process perspective, the auditor is in there. They're doing a number of councils. They've issued a information request around how the data is to be collated and pulled together and shared. And so that process really should be sufficient to generate an on-time outcome. Trevor could comment with more authority exactly where the 19 process is up to, but I would certainly not be anticipating, as a way anything like what we've got with 18 for 19. But just reflecting on what the personnel availability is like, obviously 31 October is now looming on the horizon as the standard lodgement deadline for all councils in New South Wales for 19. And I would have thought Hilltops would be well prepared to be in and around that deadline, but Trevor and Edwina would be able to comment with more authority exactly where the 19 process is up to.
Thank you for that. Councillor Horton.
Councillor John Horton, Brad. As you've indicated, we've got a good team here in Edwina Marks, Trevor Drowley and Simon Doolan. And from what I'm hearing, our team, our council, our administration are not the people who have delayed getting this report in time. I'm suggesting that it's the auditors. Having said that, would you be prepared to prepare a letter of your own to support and substantiate our paperwork to the local government, state government. Thank you.
Brad, I'm happy to just make a comment there in relation to the starting point for the audit and the referral to audit. We certainly, and to perhaps answer some of Councillor Armstrong's question, the exercise of transitioning the 3 legacy ledgers into the Tech One consolidated ledger was a massive exercise, and probably one that we all underestimated at the beginning of this financial process. During this year, the biggest exercise that we had to undertake as part of the reconciliation was the reconciliation of all of those legacy ledgers imported into Tech One, and that was a huge exercise and wasn't completed until about the end of May, and it was only at that time that we were able to gain an assurance that we had confidence in the financial system and in the results that it was producing. Since that time, we've also done a lot of restructuring of that ledger, and as a result, we're facing a much stronger and more secure financial system starting the year in 2019. And those serious delays that were the result of all of that consolidation and merger activity are certainly not being faced by us in 2019. We still have challenges in terms of the presentation of the financial statements because we haven't yet started a great deal of end-of-year audit work. So we've still got that challenge in front of us for 2019, but we are definitely in a much stronger position in 2019 than we were in 2018.
Can I make a comment, if I may? Councillor John Walker, and thank you for that, Trevor, but I think the main concern to everybody is predicting accurate dates. We say we're going to be done by a certain date or have a report by a certain date, and we find it 6 months later. If we just say, okay, we're way behind and won't be, and be realistic with the dates, I think if we do that, everybody would be happy, I think.
I think that's pretty right, Councillor Walker, and I'm pretty sure if we haven't already, we'd be seeking the extension to February, I'd imagine. Okay, everyone's having enough. Thank you once again, Brad, for that report. We appreciate that, although I would have much preferred you in the room, but this is how we've been dealt. This is what's dealt. So thank you very much for that, and we'll continue on with our meeting from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, mate.
Okay, Council has given that report. That's there on item 19306 that I had a mover and a seconder for. Happy if I put that recommendation, councillors? All those in favour? Again, thank you. That's unanimous. Our pencil has just come back. Oh, mine reader. 19307. Financial statements 2019 request for extension. The reports there, councillors, and the recommendations there, and after what you've just heard, I'm in your hands. Move Councillor Horton. Seconded Councillor Rolls. Any discussion or debate? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wallace. Item 19308 is the cash and investment report. Move Councillor Horton. Seconded Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor, just a question for the Acting Director or for Mr Drowley. Just noting that 2018 audit report and the comment that our cash reserves adequately covered 13 months of potential liabilities and whatnot. Was account made for grant income as part of those accounting for liabilities?
Yes, Councillor, it was factored into the consideration. So the ratios that the auditor was expressing the opinion on excluded grant income, well, excluded the restrictions that were placed on grant income. And so it's basically the funds that we have available to apply to meet those liabilities as and when they fall due, and we're in a relatively healthy position with respect to that.
Did they include both internal and external restrictions stripped out, or just external?
The external restrictions are only meeting those commitments that they are set aside for, and similarly the internal restrictions are only meeting the restrictions that they're set aside for. The unrestricted cash and our cash balances give us the ability to meet those liabilities as and when they fall due.
Thank you for that. Any other questions in regard to that matter? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Again, it's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. 19.309, rates harmonisation modelling September update. The reports there and the recommendations there. Councillors?
Move the recommendation.
Moved Councillor Manchester. Seconded Councillor Walker. Any questions or discussion in regard to that matter?
Just a question. Last meeting I did ask about the staffing dedicated to this project, and Councillor Manchester indicated that the former Harden Shire had been through a rates harmonisation project. I'm just wondering if you can just advise Council whether first of all, who that rates harmonisation project was with, what other local government body, and that the rates were harmonised with, and whether the staff that were involved with that may still be with Council. I don't know their names.
Well, actually, it wasn't a rate harmonisation, it was a rates review that we did, which is probably similar to a harmonisation, but it wasn't a harmonisation because it was just a rates review and a rate structure review done within the Harden Shire. And Simon, I shouldn't have mentioned his name, but anyhow, there is one staff member that was involved in it, and that'd be all that's currently with us. But it did take a lot of resources to go through that, as I stated last month.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, it wasn't a harmonisation, it was a review. Okay. All right, councillors, there's the recommendation there in front of us. It's been moved and seconded. Any other commentary? I'll put that. All those in favour?
Sorry, Mr Mayor,
sorry, Councillor Wallace.
Speak to the motion.
Yep.
I'll speak against it. I've always taken the view that this should have happened within the first 12 months of the councils being amalgamated, and for that reason I believe that extending it further is just extending the pain of amalgamation. I would support and I take on board the ramifications to the change of the land values that's going to come in, but I still think this ought to be done by next year, not the following year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace.
Just through the Chair, the Local Government Amendment Act was originally amended to make sure that we did the rates harmonisation by 2020, and just recently they amended it again to give us the extension by 2021. As indicated, we had to opt out of that extension in order to actually go early, and certainly the information or the advice given to us from the Office of Local Government was, given the notice of intention, was to not take that, to not opt out. And look, through the Chair, as part of the report, what I've done is certainly the resolution last month was to give you a regular update. And certainly what I can tell you is, in the report, what I had there was the original timeline. And at the discussion at that meeting was to say is that if we were to opt out, is that we would need to commence the consultation around that pretty virtually straight away. And certainly you've got an adjusted timeline in relation to that. At that point, I did not have a very robust detailed modelling at that time. However, I have been working with the consultant, and they have given me good, robust modelling that's certainly able to be taken to workshop to council and discussed further. in relation to the final preferred scenario that you actually want to take forward to go out through a consultation process. So certainly we're almost ready, but we're not quite ready, but we are almost ready. However, the indication is from the Office of Local Government is that they won't let us opt out. It's up to council whether you want to do something in relation to that, but we would have to go back to the Minister very quickly.
Yeah, the conversation at Terrigal about rate harmonisation came up several times as well, and there was different opinions, but a lot of the council staff there seem to think that the modelling shouldn't have been a problem. It's pretty basic from what those organisations set up there. Most of the councils mentioned that they probably had the will of the councillors to implement the changes. It was concerning some, and some were rather deferring because they didn't want to make that decision. But I can assure from a number of councillors in this room that's not the reason the extension's been sought here. It's because of other circumstances. So, having said that, if anyone else would like to speak in regard to that, I've had a mover and a seconder. Speak against it. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Hands up, please. For? Got them, Deirdre? Yep. Against? That's carried. Yep. Thank you. It's carried. 19310 National Roads and Transport Congress and to the National Roads. Recommendation determine delegate attendance at the National Local Roads and Transport Congress. I've had guests. The first question is: do we send someone to this? Council feel that to send someone to the National Local Roads and Transport Congress? And if so, who?
Through the Mayor, how important is it for us to be a part of this Congress? Is it important for us as Hilltops to be recognised and part of the process?
I imagine that I could hand over to staff who've been to these. I haven't actually been to one of these, but I'm not saying that I wouldn't go to one at all if I put my hand up, but no doubt there'd be benefits brought away from it. Councillor Walker went to one not long ago, a state one it must have been, and there was things brought back from it that he was quite impressed from, so I'm pretty sure that there could be something picked up from this. It's just up for a matter of council to determine if they wish to send someone and who that someone might be. But if you'd like to make comments there.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. As the Mayor said, Councillor Walker and myself attended the State Roads Conference back in June. This National Roads Congress is held every 2 years. It's an extension of that, but certainly looks at strategic issues for roads and transport on a federal level. And it will consider things like the Inland Rail, the major infrastructure projects running around New South Wales, and the federal government certainly considers strategic issues for this council. Councillor Walker certainly brought back some issues from the state conference, and I imagine this Congress would also provide councils with a strategic view of what's happening nationwide.
Thank you for that. Having said that, I'm quite happy to attend the National Local Roads and Transport Congress if council deem that someone should be attending there, and so I would be quite happy to be that person if council sees fit.
Can I move a motion?
Councillor Armstrong.
That council decline the invitation to attend the conference.
You have a seconder for that?
I'll second that. I'm just looking through the agenda. I'm trying to see where Hilltops would fit into the programming there, considering the costs and whatnot.
Thank you very much, Councillor Walker. So I've got a notice of motion there, councillors. It's pretty straightforward. I'll put that notice of motion, unless someone wants to speak to or for or against it.
Just, Mr Mayor, question. Is there any opportunity for community members to go along?
Through the chair, not with council funds. Certainly, but this is public funds. You've got a current budget allocated. This is public funds for council.
So not to represent council?
No, that's right. That's the role of councillors.
Thank you. Okay, anyone like
Just
to speak?
just a comment. This conference is more around local government than private enterprise. I attended one quite a number of years ago now, but this is where the Roads to Recovery money was came about. How the Roads Recovery money came about in Moree in the 1990s somethings, and they've been a big supporter and a push to the federal government to maintain the Roads Recovery funding.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for or against before? Councillor O'Connor.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I think if you were willing to go, I think it might just give us an overall picture of where the national roads are headed, and it's probably a good thing to have in the background.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other commentary in regard to the... I'll speak to you. Right, a reply, Councillor Armstrong?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is an absolute waste of time. It's a talk fest. Little more than a junket as far as I'm concerned. It's 4 days wasted when we don't have 4 days to waste through the end of this year. I'd suggest that there's a better use of our very valuable staff time than to spend a day's travel plus, or 2 days travel plus another 2 days there.
I concur with Councillor Armstrong.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rolls. We've jumped over.
Through the Mayor, I'd support the Mayor attending this conference. I think it's important that we don't become too parochial, that we see the bigger picture and where we fit into it. And if the Mayor is happy to go, then I would support his attendance at this conference.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls. Okay, that being said, the notice of motion reads... All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those for? Against, sorry. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That motion is lost. And no one foreshadowed anything. We move to the next item. 311. I've lost my page. Distribution of 1920 sponsorship and financial assistance funds.
Move the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Walker. Seconded by Councillor Wallace. I have a question in regard to the sponsorship committee or group. Someone might be able to help me. Do we are there minutes taken of these meetings and provided to council as to how these decisions are made, or how does that work with the governance around that? Who's on that committee? You on that, Councillor? And Councillor Rolls, maybe Councillor Rolls or Councillor Armstrong could, or staff could answer me.
I think it'd be for the General Manager to answer that question that relates to governance.
They're still talking on the point beforehand, Samir.
Just through the chair, certainly, Mr. Mayor, you asked me the same question. Look, my understanding is that they're presenting, that there's a discussion of those applications. However, they're not minuted as such. It's a committee, and they make recommendations, and those recommendations form the report that you have in front of you.
I understood that the officer in that I won't mention names. That the officer attending was taking minutes. I have never seen the minutes, but that was my understanding. If it's not the case, then that's certainly a very poor practice to have a committee without minutes, because there'd be no declarations of interest made either then. Which would be... Can I suggest that needs to be amended in every instance? Any committee needs to have minutes taken, and which will include declarations of interest. Well,
especially when you're dealing with handing out money. It's a very crucial point of governance that we need to probably a bit closer to. Anyway, I had a mover and a seconder. Is there any further discussion on that matter, councillors? Please, I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again, it's unanimous. Thank you. 19312, Stronger Communities Fund project updates. There's a recommendation there.
Yeah,
Moved Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor Rolls. Questions or discussions in regard to any of those matters before we look at it? I had a question in regard to the funding, and I've lost my tag now. I think it's in regard to the Chinese tribute gardens, and off the top of my head it was $110,000 had been spent and nothing had happened, except I've seen the drawings of potentially what could happen. I had asked staff, and it may be, if I can find it, a bit of an explanation about where the 110,000, there we, that's not it, that's Blackheart Gully, sorry, 110,000. I will find it. It's over the back.
Page 268, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Over 300,000 one, I'm over. Too many pages. There we go, $106,914.30, planning, staff, survey and design costs. Wow. Now I have seen two maps that were presented to us. I have seen them. I know other councillors asked about this before, so I don't know if the answer's there for me today, but you can take it on notice. But I would like to have explained to council how that $106,914 has been spent. And when you also, if you would like to flick back to Blackheart Gully, there's $110,000 been spent there. And
So can you just clarify where the 106,000, which line item?
page 268, Stronger Country Communities Fund 2, Lambing Flat Chinese Tribute Garden. Yeah, it's over the back when I missed it as well. And Blackheart Gully, I just flicked over, has $109,000 there. Now, my memory of what we were presented for that was the same thing, was a drawing with the track and some toilets. So I don't know. I'm not being flippant. I just think 106,000 planning, staff, survey and design costs for that one, and then you go back to Blackheart Gully and it's $109,000. There's $210,000 and all I've seen so far is a couple of maps. Anyway, you can take it on notice if you like and come back to me. Anyone else got any questions on them projects and the funding?
Mr Mayor, just a question on the solar power facilities.
What page are we on, councillor? Sorry?
We're on page 255 and will probably have to be taken on notice.
Thank you.
It notes that there's been $677.84 spent at Harden Admin Building, $294.28 spent at the Harden Depot, yet in the comments it says Harden Works completed and panels online. Did we somehow achieve a masterful stroke and get what I thought was $20,000 worth of building done for $900, or...?
This could be a win. Have staff got an answer for council?
I'll take that on notice, and I suspect it's a decimal point in the wrong place. I'll take that on notice, council.
Could we also get clarification on the costings listed under Harden Pool renewals? $22,000 facility design group and $18,000 or $17,500 on lighting specification and design. Could that be reported at the next council meeting, please?
Just to repeat, could you just repeat that, please? Just make sure we get that.
The first one related to the costings on the solar panel facilities.
Yes, got that.
The second one related, page 257, to the costings on the Harden Pool renewals, in particular the $22,000 for the facility design group and the $17,500 for lighting specification design.
Any further questions on those reports, councillors? Councillor Wallace.
Mr Mayor, page 260, the young tennis courts. I notice here that it says that construction has commenced in August 2019, but I note later in the agenda the Sports Advisory Committee minutes say that the is anticipated building will commence in September. Has building commenced?
I can talk on that. The President rang me the other day in regard to that they've decided to actually close the courts down for 2 to 3 weeks because there's that many workers working there and they deem safety was an issue. But they tell me that the completion date is actually a bit earlier than that. They hope to have it completed and, earlier than what they first stated. So they're pretty pleased with how things are going, but they just made a decision to shut everything down for the safety of everyone concerned. But yeah, they're very pleased with how the project's going ahead. And Council received complimentary thoughts about that at a function I was at again the other night from people involved with the tennis courts and the tennis club. So we'll take them while we can get them. Any other questions, councillors, in regard to anything on those projects? Councillor Flannery's got his few. No?
I've lost it. It's about the 12th.
Okay. All right, councillors, I've had a mover and a seconder. With no further discussion, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 313, development application stats for August 19. Receive a note. Moved Councillor Walker, seconded Councillor Horton. Thank you. There's no questions. All those in favour? Again, so be it. Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. 314. That's Councillor Flannery leaves the room. Declared interest. Item 19314, demolition of existing shed and erection of a new shed, CUNNINGAR Road, Barwang. The reports there, councillors, and the reports there from the Acting Director of Sustainable Growth.
Move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Moved Councillor Manchester. Seconded Councillor Walker. Any questions in regard to that matter? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Again? That was unanimous in the room. Thank you. Would someone like to let Councillor Flannery know to come back in? And that was painless. And the Acting Director of Sustainable Growth can take the grin off. Oh, there. I've been patiently waiting for about 5 meetings. I thought I'd spin you in. Yeah. 19315, councillors. A modification in 602 Spring Creek Road, Young. The report again is there in front of you, and the recommendations there.
Move the recommendation.
Move Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Rolls. Any questions or discussion in regard to that matter? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. 316. The public exhibition for MURRUMBURRAH flood study report. There's a report there, councillors, and a recommendation.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr Chair.
Councillor Manchester. Seconded by Councillor Horton. Any questions in regard to that?
Just a question,
Councillor Armstrong.
The meeting that was to be held yesterday, is that to be re-held? Or something that I noticed it was cancelled in the schedule, the floodplain management, to review this particular document. Is that rescheduled for later on, or?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there's been 2 floodplain management meetings. Yesterday's was the Young Floodplain Management. I'll move that there. Yesterday's was Young Floodplain Management Committee. That was held. There was one this morning for the MURRUMBURRAH floodplain study, which a number of councillors attended as well, which is what this report refers to.
It's just that I'm confused because I've got a cancelled floodplain management meeting, presentation of concept design yesterday that appeared to be cancelled. I just in the councillors' schedules, it is marked as cancelled.
Okay, so all right. Obviously, there's a bit of a flaw somewhere with the calendar dates for councillors in regard to that one. Okay, moving a second. All those in favour of that recommendation? Again, unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 19317.
Mr Mayor, could I move the recommendation with an amendment to B? Could I remove the reference to the Murrumburrah precinct so that it simply reads endorse the use of a toilet at Blackguard Gully with Murrumburrah precinct to be determined, this is commentary, Murrumburrah precinct to be determined when we finalise the Murrumbullagh Creek issues, please.
Yep.
Also,
So basically all Councillor Flannery is asking that the Murrumburrah precinct be words taken out of that.
I also note, Mr Mayor, on page, which I was trying to look for, on page 269 of the report, there's been an allocation of $278,000 for amenities at Roberts Park. So I think the Newson Park design should fit into that.
Mr Mayor, I'm just wondering whether that perhaps Blackguard Gully should be removed from that as well, given that the funds have been transferred to the Young Aquatic Centre. Perhaps there will be no money to buy one.
I'm happy for it for line item B to be deleted in its entirety.
Okay, so we have a recommendation been moved by Councillor Flannery. So I'd presume second by Councillor Armstrong, is that correct?
You're correct.
Correct, thank you. And the recommendation would now read A, C, D, E and F, with B being removed.
Yeah, except I have real concerns about taking Blackguard Gully out. It's still a public recreation area.
That's noted, Councillor Walker, yeah.
I presume through the Mayor, for Blackguard Gully, if in the next round of funding, if we decide that the money is being moved to the pool and the next round of funding we do fund Blackguard Gully, then we would look at the toilet block then, wouldn't we?
Very much, as Councillor Flannery said, at a later date we'd look at the same matter there, would be the same for Blackguard Gully. Yeah, it doesn't disappear, it just goes off this recommendation. So everyone clear on the board behind me what it actually is now? Yes. They're just taking the B out. Is there any other comments or questions or for or against? If not, I'll put the recommendation with that amendment in it. All those in favour? Aye. Again? Councillor Walker is against. Those Deirdre. Thank you, councillors. Yeah, I'll be pleased to see this toilet blocks actually put back in place. 19318, Hilltops Works Report. It's there in front of you, councillors, and the recommendations there.
Move the recommendation.
Moved Councillor Manchester. Seconded by Councillor Wallace.
Okay. Question, please, Mr Mayor.
Question, Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor, question for the Director. On page 337, it notes general maintenance on Neil Street, Caravan Park and Newson Park ongoing. Could the Director please advise whether the trimming or pruning of the trees in Neil Street was carried out by an arborist?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, the trimming of the trees in Neil Street was carried out by our council staff under the supervision of the arborist. The arborist will be coming back to inspect again in December. There are a couple of stages because of how long it's been since the trees were pruned and how the shape of them. It's going to be on a couple of stages to allow the trees to grow and allow the form of the tree to be returned over a couple of stages.
So an arborist actually was there and recommended which branches and limbs were to be removed throughout the course of the work?
That is the information I've received, Councillor.
Can you please confirm that at the next meeting? And I'll just make note of the landscape maintenance manual, which was part of Harden Shire's adopted plan for it. On page 36, Golden Robinia. These trees require special treatment, including winter pruning and shaping of foliage, together with a light summer prune to reduce excessive growth. All pruning is to be undertaken by a qualified arborist. Under prune to a minimum of 1.4 metres. We go over the page. Council must employ a fully qualified arborist on a biannual basis, that is, inspection on, and goes on. Arborist shall inspect all trees together with council, and that was what we adopted at the last council meeting. So could I have it confirmed that an arborist was present to ensure that all the pruning was as per the arborist specifications, please?
Was what kind of proof would you like? Would you like the copy of that report?
Yes, could I get a report from the arborist, please?
Thank you. Any other questions in regard to the works report?
Question, Mr Mayor. Question
Councillor
through you to the Director of Operations. Infrastructure, sorry. The gravel resheeting program, particularly in the western areas, can the Director provide us with advice in regard to the crushing of gravel that may be required for the gravel resheeting program to be undertaken by council in those western areas, and also whether that gravel that's held in stockpiles is costed against the gravel resheeting program, and also whether or not glyphosate is being used in the urban areas of Hilltops.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Certainly in terms of the gravel, we've identified the cost of crushing the gravel and transporting it to the jobs, and that is costed against the various resheeting programs. On top of that, there is a percentage allowed for future remediation of those gravel pits, which is put into reserves. So yes, it is costed, including remediation. Of recent times, over the last 6 weeks, I've asked for, because of recent court cases, I've instructed glyphosate not to be used anywhere in our weed spraying, and at this stage we're trialling Basta, a chemical called Basta, and we are looking for other opportunities as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director. Any other questions on the works report?
One other question. The weed control, the roadside spraying that's referred to, is that coming out of the fire control budget or out of...
Councillor, I'll need to take that on notice. I'll get back to you.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, that's it. I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour? Councillor Manchester? Yep. Unanimous, thank you. 319 is the action summary report. It's there, councillors, and there's the recommendations there. Do I have a mover and a second to start with? Moved Councillor Wallace, thank you. Seconded Councillor Rolls, thank you. Any questions on that report, councillors, or comments? I didn't think so. Close. Councillor Flannery?
348, it says that the weed control functions advisory group has been completed.
Lost you.
Through the chair, which page is that? If you wouldn't mind, Councillor.
Page 348, item 1965.
Weed controls.
Yeah.
Completed.
So through the chair, my apologies, we've done part of that resolution. The advertising was scheduled to commence, we just haven't placed that advertisement.
Thank you for that. Any other comments in regard to that item? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour? Again, it's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. 19.320 is correspondence for attention. Moved Councillor Horton. Seconded Councillor O'Connor. Thank you. So we've got to note the media release. Just the cost of council elections. Recommendations down the bottom. Okay, let's I've been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Again, thank you. Council section 355, committee reports requiring attention.
Through the chair, you had an action that that we go out to the Regional Tourism Committee, which hadn't met for a long time due to its inability to maintain a quorum. And certainly we have gone out, we've advertised that process and come back, and we do have a relevant set of nominations before you that are interested to come and work with us in relation to regional tourism.
Thank you for that. There's a report there. There's,
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Riles and I have both realised that former young Shire Councillor Brian Mullaney has exceptional Irish heritage, but perhaps his name is Brian, not Brain. No disrespect.
My apologies. Yeah.
Mullaney, as he's known to me, will really like that.
I'm certain it's a mistake.
Yeah. Okay, councillor. So we're happy to accept. I've got to get a mover in a second. Did I have? Yes. You have. So we've just got. No, I didn't think. 3, 2, 1. Sorry, I didn't have a move. General Manager spoke first. Moved, Councillor O'Connor. Seconded, Councillor Riles. Thank you. All those in favour? Again, thank you, councillors. So be it. 19322. Moved, Councillor Walker. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Manchester.
Question,
Councillor Armstrong.
Question 3, Mr. Mayor, to the General Manager. Why wouldn't these people simply become volunteers?
These particular people are the chief witness.
That's the reason why I asked the question, Councillor Walker.
I mean, through the chair is I've just tabled the report as it was presented to me. I can certainly take that on notice about whether there's an opportunity for them just to be volunteers instead of committee members.
Can we refer to the volunteer policy?
Through the chair, we do have a section 355 policy and constitution that currently does require membership. So certainly I'll take that on notice and give you some advice next one.
Taking that on board, I've had a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. All those in favour? Again, so be it. Thank you, councillors. That's my page. 19323.
Look, just through the
Sorry?
Through the chair,
Yep.
we have had some legal advice that we don't actually need to endorse that lease. We can actually negotiate directly with the Crown.
So, item 19323 is deleted from the agenda. Councillors?
If you could just defer that.
Or defer? Would you like me to defer it, or is it deleted from the agenda?
If you could remove the report, yes.
Remove it.
Yes, please.
I have a question in regard to it.
Yes.
Councillor Armstrong.
I'd like the General Manager to advise us how whether the JUGIONG Advancement Group has delegated authority to endorse leases, and if it does not, then how would this report possibly come to Council?
Yeah. Look, through the chair, you're right, Councillor Armstrong, the wording is incorrect. It is Council that endorses the lease, it's not Section 355. Whilst the Section 355 committee have come to us asking for us to sign that lease, it is not theirs to sign in relation to that from a legal perspective. They do not have a delegation to sign leases on Council's behalf. So indeed, if a lease was to be signed, Council must sign that. However, under the Crown Lands Act, we actually have the ability now to directly negotiate with the Crown as the land manager, and therefore we don't need to actually sign the lease.
I assume that would have been the case. My concern is that this report has got in the business paper and come to Council to be withdrawn at the 11th hour and 59th minute. I have grave concerns about the governance attached to these Section 355 committees, and this is an example of that governance, of my concerns being realised for that governance.
Look, Through the chair, I do apologise, Councillor. It was a last-minute report put into the agenda, and yes, it should have had due diligence.
So, Councillor, I'm just going to seek some clarification about the process from here, about removing that or actually putting that recommendation and voting that recommendation down, which will alleviate the problem anyway. Am I correct, or was there a process, Councillor Armstrong?
Well, I would suggest that at this particular stage to remove the item is the wrong thing to do, that the vote should be put, and in my opinion the proper outcome would be that it would be voted down.
That's what I thought. Thank you, Matt, for clarifying that. So I have a mover and a seconder for that recommendation? No. Not yet, I haven't.
No.
If I don't get a mover and a seconder, it fails automatically. Thank you very much. Next item.
Can I just clarify, who owns the land? Is it Crown or is it
Yes,
Council?
through the chair, yes.
So this is one of these Crown ones we don't want to take over?
No, through the chair, the land was the subject of a Crown lease for some time, and indeed the normal practice of the Crown is to re-establish a new lease. The legislation has changed in 2018, and as part of that legislative change is the ability for council to work directly with the Crown in relation to, as the land manager, and so certainly our need to take up that lease at this point is probably not necessary. And there are, yes, we are in a pilot, indeed that could form part of that pilot, but we have other options other than just automatically endorsing the lease.
Thank you. Item 19.324. Hilltops Council Local Traffic Advisory Committee has a report there and recommendations to go with it.
Move the recommendations.
Move Councillor Manchester. Seconded. Sorry, Councillor Manchester moved it. Councillor Armstrong's the seconder. Thank you.
Can I have a comment on that?
Question or comment? Yep.
I noticed on the draft and the minutes that were about the second one on committees, that the councillors were taken off this particular committee. Could that be looked into?
Yeah. Yes. Through the chair, I do note that report, that initial report that was presented to council, did actually say that. So indeed, I'm certainly happy to take that on notice as to why councillors can't be represented on that committee as all other committees. Certainly.
There's actually a few errors on that report that was put to us to be sorted before it comes back to us. So, okay, council, is that I've got a mover and a seconder. Yes. No question, mate. All those in favour? Aye. Again, so be it. Unanimous. Thank you. That takes me to. I've got to be careful here. There's a recommendation with the Harden special event. Is that where I'm going to next? General Manager's report here. Hilltops Council.
Through the chair, that's just meeting minutes, is it? Requiring no action.
Beg your pardon?
So, 19.325.
Council selection 325 is moved by Councillor Walker.
I'll second it, Mr Mayor, with a comment.
Seconded, Councillor Wallace.
In the Lachlan Regional Transport Committee meeting, which Councillor Horton attended on our behalf, it states that Young is spending $300 million on a new swimming pool. Now, it probably feels like that for most of us.
Close, very close. Can't get up.
Don't think it's
point
right.
of order.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. I did give a report at that meeting, and I said in the vicinity of $3 million. I picked up the $300 million, and I've contacted the secretary, who's rectifying that.
Thank you for that. Good pickup, Councillor Wallace. All right, I've had a mover and a seconder for that report. All those in favour? Again, thank you, councillors. 19.326. This was a question with notice from the Mayor, myself, in regard to those projects, an audit update, which was, we've obviously looked at that a bit earlier on, so it's a bit dealt with, but I'll still move that the recommendation I put there as it stands. So I'll move it if someone would like to second that. Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. All those in favour? Again. So be it, thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry.
You also had a green coupon report.
And we go back, that actually is a notice of motion, which I'll deal with in a minute when we get to, there's another question on notice, Harden Pools question on notice, which is 19327.
Mr. Mayor, look, I've had discussions with the director on this yesterday. I had a bit of a meeting, and I would like to move that this be deferred, subject to further clarification on light poles and whatnot, to the October meeting.
Councillor Flint, we get that with our pencil, or get that organised for us, and then. Here we go.
So,
Waiting for me or not?
yep, defer until the October meeting for further clarification of law holes. Just need to move in a second.
That's moved by Councillor Flannery. That's it. We get seconded, Councillor Horton.
Yep.
Everyone aware what we're voting on the board? That's there. Yep. All those in favour? Again, it's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. At this stage, councillors, we will jump back to item 19298 on page 41 of the written copies. And again, I'm the responsible office for that. This has come about, this notice of motion, having conversations with numerous people in our community about what they obviously considered was a great idea at the time. I did explain to council once before, there wasn't a great take-up when we had this once before. I think people are getting used to the idea. We have the waste bins there now as well, but I've had a number of people say the opportunity to use those 2 coupons to take the bigger environmental stuff to the tip free of charge was a great thing, and they'd like to see if we could reinstate it. So I put together that notice of motion, and dot point C is there for a reason, that I believe that it's a worthwhile cause and it's a worthwhile thing having, and it's not a great cost, as you can see. But I also mentioned that I believe if the take-up rate isn't 50%, then maybe council could look at ceasing it once more. Well, I say it's not a great expense, but if people aren't going to use it, we can only offer it up, and if they don't use it, and if the take-up is under that, we could discontinue it or have another look at it. But that was the intention of that notice of motion. While I'm on that, and it's a little bit off it, I won't go too far off it, the other thing I'll be bringing to next month's meeting and be seeking a report on the ratepayers who live on the fringe, if you like, of our town, and who pay the $44 tip fee but have no service, and are expected to pay X amount of dollars for a key to take their rubbish to one of our rural tips, which we know is a problem anyway, and that could be 15 kilometres away, and they live half a kilometre from our tip. So that's something that I'll bring to the next council meeting. I've brought this up before with the previous young council, and Councillor Armstrong can probably elaborate. We'll do it at a later stage, but there's a reason for it. I just can't see how you can instigate a charge on someone when they don't receive that service. It just doesn't sit well with me, and it doesn't sit well with
Mayor,
the person.
That is not a charge for service.
What would you call it, Councillor Armstrong? Well, I'm in your hands.
That's a contribution to the maintenance of the rural garbage tips. It was never set as a charge for service. It was never intended to be a charge for service, and I don't believe that Hilltops Council has rendered it as a charge for service either. It's a contribution to the upkeep, the maintenance, or provision of rural garbage tips.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
So,
I'm pleased to hear that,
because is it a contribution for lack of service?
Because that's not how our community read it and take it. Now, you can give it that title, and I understand that title. I don't agree with it because it's a charge that I don't think they get a service for. So, but that's for another day. What I'm looking at today, this notice of motion, is there in front of you, councillors, and as it reads. So I'll move that notice of motion.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Can I get a seconder first?
Oh,
Seconded by Councillor O'Connor. Yep, thank you. Question.
Sorry, question was, is that for green waste to be picked up at people's houses or for them to take it to the tip?
For them to take it to the tip.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I don't agree with that. It's a nice thought, but I consider that it's prejudiced. You need a trailer or a utility to take the green waste to the disposal area, and if you're an elderly person, there's no way you're going to get it out there. So why should the fortunate ones, the ones who've got a trailer and a truck or a ute, have that opportunity and the rest of the community don't?
Take your point on board, Councillor Horton, that the opportunity could be made available. Life isn't perfect, I understand that, but I think this is an opportunity to give people to take that rate up and see how many people take the benefit of it. But I take your point on
Mr.
board.
Mayor, I'd like to speak against it.
Councillor Armstrong would like to speak against it.
Whilst I understand the sentiment that's attached to it, the reality of it is that those persons who are not paying a domestic waste charge to have their garbage picked up, they have access to a garbage tip and it costs them nothing to take. There is no charge for them to take green waste to the rural tip. There's no gate charge there. There's no access. So what this is actually doing, if they receive 2 coupons to take it to the Young transfer station, then they're effectively getting unlimited trips to the village tip and 2 trips to the transfer station. Or do they use their 2 coupons to go to their village tip? What's the value of the 2 coupons to those persons that paid the $44 that you just spoke about?
Sorry, I'll turn my mic off for you. I would suggest there is a cost to it, and the last bit of your explanation sort of lost me. I'm sorry, Councillor, but I'll take your point on board. So I've had 2 speak as against it. I'll take that as my right of reply. I'll put that notice of motion. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Did we get the numbers? So we go back now. 19,328. Am I? Oh no, 329. Sorry. We're all on the same page, council. 19,329. Might be flicked over the page. 19,328.
411. Page 411.
Thank you, I've got it there now. There's no notice of motions or rescissions been done after that, so could someone like to move that we go into close, please? Move Councillor Wallace, seconded Councillor Rolls. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask that we have a break of 10 minutes?